In this video, we're going to have a look at opening balances and how we can automate them using the tools within QuickBooks itself.
It's real, 'cause I can get them out of my head.
Hello, my name's Aaron Patrick and I'm a qualified chartered accountant and also a certified UK trainer. Now, what we're going to look at today is actually a requested video from someone reaching out to us asking how do we put opening balances into QuickBooks nice and efficiently. The important thing to know about this particular opening balance is because the client is actually VAT registered and cash accounting, we have to be really careful in the way that we put the information into QuickBooks. Now, QuickBooks has actually given us some nice updates lately, and it's going to make this process a lot more automated than it has been in the past. Previously, what we've had to do is we've had to manually put in opening balances using the journal entries, but if you remember, we now have the opportunity to go in and import journals directly into QuickBooks themselves. So we're going to use that feature today, and hopefully we're going to see how useful that can be. Remember that if you do need to, QuickBooks does have the ability for you to contact them themselves and they can actually do a migration for you depending on what software you're coming from. But in this system we're going to do the process as manual as we possibly can, but we're utilising some of the automations that were in QuickBooks and we're going to get that data in ourselves. Now, for you to be able to do this yourself, you are going to need to have access to the previous file. So it could be on any form of cloud accounting or desktop software, or even if it's client are doing it via Excel, you're going to need to have access to that. Another opportunity for you to use this feature is if not only putting opening balances at the beginning of setting up the client for them, but what about if you're doing a year-end set of account and you've made adjustments? This could be also a really good feature, and you could use the same principles of that when we're applying the same rules that we're about to look at. Okay then, let's jump straight in there and have a look exactly how we're going to achieve this. Okay then, so the first thing we want to look at is opening balances using the import tools that are in QuickBooks. Now, documents you're going to need to be able to produce this yourself is you're going to need that trial balance from the client. You're going to need a copy of their debtors, a copy of their creditors, maybe some stock if they're using the stock functionality and they're actually using the valuation of stock within their current software, and you're going to need to know VAT details. Also consider bank, wages, CIS and director's loan account, and there are other control accounts that you might want to consider as well, because think about it, from an opening balance point of view, yes, you could just import the individual numbers, but for example your debtors is going to be made up of multiple of different items. And what we can do with QuickBooks is we can import those items individually using one of the import features within QuickBooks. And that means that when we run things like our trade debtors report and things like that, the client themselves, when they come to look at their file, they're going to see the total amount of debtors and then they're going to see how that is made up. So try as much as possible to get your hands on all these documents first of all, giving you the opportunity then to be able to make your import process as quick as possible. First thing we need to do is set up the file. Then when we set up the file, we need to consider things like VAT and multi-currency is done. And then what I would do to make it nice and clean as well is consider importing some of those lists as well. So you've got customer lists, supplier lists, product and services and chart of accounts. If you can get all that information in ready to put into QuickBooks, this is going to make your life a lot easier. So a quick mention on how these files are set up. So this is a collection of all the documents I'm going to put into QuickBooks, and I'm going to be utilising all these documents to get them in there. Now, the documents here are all in either Excel or CSV file, and when we come to look at the import section, you're going to know which ones are needed. But basically, all I've done is I've taken the sample files. So remember, within the import option in QuickBooks, you have the options to look at sample files. I've taken those sample files and I've just basically put on all the information into there. What that's going to mean for me is that my starting point is already set. I know that all the files are laid out correctly and all I need to go in. So if I take an example and I open, you'll notice here that it's all set up nicely, and all I've done is taken the information and put it in there. Another example, if I open up chart of accounts, again, the file's already been set up for me because I'm using that sample file, and all I've done is implemented all the data in there that I need to. That's going to make my life really easy, and it's going to mean that when I come and import this data in, I'm going to have it as simplified as I possibly can. So, as we saw there, our first thing is to set up the file. I'm actually going to set this file up completely from scratch. So I've just logged in as QB Accountant. I'm going to press Add Client, and from here I'm going to have New Import Client. I'm going to put an email address in there, so test.com. This is just a temporary file, and from a wholesale point of view, I'm going to do direct discount and put a plus number, and then make myself a master admin and save. So all that's done is that's created a brand new file for me. So if you look here, I've got a new import client. When I go in there, it's going to ask me all those questions we're used to when we set up a client for the first time. And all I'm going to do is say that, yes, I am a private limited company. I've only been trading for 1 to 2 years, but I've still got opening balances I want to bring in. And how I best describe it for today, I'm just going to put other and press next. And I'm going to just say all set. That's created me a brand new file, never been used before, first time this has ever been used. So before you go through importing, do consider, so bring it back to here, do consider these first items. Are they VAT registered and have they got multi-currency? If either of those answers is yes, I do recommend that you do just get them set up straight away, because that way you're not going to have any issues. So remember to open or set up your taxes. You just need to quickly go in and go to taxes and set up. So I'm going to just put it for March. I'm going to submit returns quarterly and cash accounting. Remember, we're cash account on this one. That's why we get some complications. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And press next. That means my VAT has been set up. And what I can do now is I can go through and see if there's anything else up. I'm not going to worry about MTD for this point in time, and I'm just going to press done. So my VAT is now set up. The next thing I need to consider is if I go to my documents, to my dashboard, and I go over to look at accounts and settings, I can just see if I need to, this is where I'd go in under advanced and I would turn on multi-currency. I'm going to just turn multi-currency on at this point, just in case I need it when I come to do my imports. But remember, always consider if that's a need, because multi-currency is one of those features that once you've turned it on, you can't turn it back off again. And also your home currency is going to be locked into whatever currency you've put in there. Now, because this is also a client of mine, I'm going to add them their logo. Nice thing is when you start doing things like this, it means it's going to go straight to the place that next time you import, it's always going to be there for you. So I'm going to import that logo. And press save. Okay then, so my file or my client is all set up. Nice and easy that was. So the next thing we're going to look at now is importing those lists. Now the reason this is useful for us is if we go to our company cog in the top right hand corner and go to tools and import data, you'll notice from here that we have the opportunity to look at what information we can bring in. So we've got customers, supplies, chart of accounts, products and services, what we're going to use as well, invoice, credit notes, sales receipts, journals and bills. Now those first four, ignoring the bank, so these first four here, customers, supplies, chart of accounts, product services, they're what we call your lists. And you don't have to necessarily put these in first, but you're going to find your life easier if you do put them in to make it nice and easy. So let's just import them because it's really straightforward. I've taken the information directly from my previous one, and I'm literally going to go browse, find the customer. I'm going to make sure it says customers here and customers there. Press next, next. And then here's the information that's about to be brought in. Now, just previous to that, just so I've covered it, this map data, because I'm using that sample file, it's automatically going to bring these into the right area for me. So I'm comfortable that everything's in the right place. I'm now happy to see all the data's about to come in. I literally pressed import, and I've just had 81 customers successfully put into QuickBooks. And what that means is it's going to set them up for me. Oh, these ones aren't going to be imported right now. That's not a problem. These two here, I didn't want to bring them anyway. It's going to look and see that data that's there. All I do is I press X, press yes, and now 79 of the 81 is done. So that seems good to me. The next thing that I'm going to be looking at now is bringing in suppliers. This is where that download sample file is for when you do need to. So every time you want to download something or look at sample file, they're always below the place where it is to import. So I'm going to browse. I'm going to find that supplier list. Again, I'm going to make sure it says suppliers and suppliers there. Press next, next, import. And as simple as that, my suppliers are in. Now again, it's coming up saying there are errors here that they don't want to bring in. And I'm happy with that because they're the ones that are errors for me, and that's fine. It's still brought in the other 48, so if you do have errors like this, that's not a problem. Now at this point, I could change the names of them. So it's basically saying these won't come in because they're already there, and that's fine. If I press import, it won't go in. If I change them to a particular name, it's done. Or as I did before, I press X, press yes, and that information's in. So they're not going to bring in duplicate items for you. It's going to do a sense check. And if that sense check does come up with error messages, don't worry about it. Just bring that data in. So chart of accounts, I'm going to browse. I'm going to find my chart of accounts in here. I'm going to press next. I'm going to press next one more time. I'm going to make sure I'm happy with these files that are coming through and press import. And just like last time, it's going to come up telling me there's duplicate items. And the only reason these items are already here is because in this case, it's not that I've put the items in twice in the customer list or anything like that. It's because when we created the account, that account already had those particular items in. So you think about it, when I created it as a limited company, they already had purchase of telephone insurance already there. So all I do, again, I press that X at the top right hand corner, press yes, and importantly, 68 of the 72 have gone through. For the duplicate items have not been put in. Finally, I'm going to do products and services. Now, the only key difference here we've got regarding products and services is with this particular client, they actually use the stock valuation as part and parcel of their old software. So every time they bought in a new item and they sold that particular item, they wanted the software to update how much the value of stock they had, so the quantity plus the value as well. Now, in this case, we want to maintain that information and we might as well bring that value of that stock in as at that date. And we don't just want to bring it as one figure on the trial balance, we want to bring it in as multiple items. So let's actually do that for us. So I'm going to come in as products and services, I'm going to press open, I'm going to go press next. Again, the mapping's done for me because I've used that sample file. Now, when it comes to products and services, you do need to be a little bit more careful. So in this case, as I said, our client is utilising the fact that it's got 20 of these and 10 of that and everything else. And when we look at this information, yes, it's bringing in each service or product as it's coming through. So the most important thing for us to understand is there is quantity items coming down here. 5, 3, 4, 12, 5, 8, 23, 50, 10, 24. Don't worry if it's got red marks around the zeros. That's just saying that basically, are you sure that there isn't anything there? But it's starting to figure out what the stock value is. And actually, if you look at it, it's already got the value of what it was sold and what the value of it purchased for. So QuickBooks has all the information it needs to put a stock valuation against it. Now, QuickBooks is really clever in the way that it sets this item up. And what it does is it considers that stock value, what that stock value is, and it will put it in the stock element on your balance sheet. But for the credit or the other entry, it's going to use an account called retained profit brought forward. And it's going to create that for us automatically. So when I press import, so those items have all been included. Now the important thing to me to do now is just to check my profit and loss, my trial balance should I say, as at this date. And what I'm going to do to make my life easier is I'm going to find my trial balance, I'm going to make it a favourite, but I'm also going to duplicate the tab so I can keep coming back to it. Now the reason that I'm interested in my trial balance at this point is because it's automatically started to build items for me. What you'll see there, and if I put it to the actual date that I was doing this to, so 31st, so that's my last year end date. I have £6,650 of stock asset, but it's created this new account, retained profit balance forward account. And every time you add an opening balance to QuickBooks, because it wants to make it nice and easier for anyone to do this, you don't have to understand debits and credits and having to look at journals. If you put an opening balance in, even if you were creating a brand new account, so if I just went in and was creating a brand new chart account, for example, so I went chart accounts, see my chart account, I went new, you'll notice there's an option down there for balance. At any point, if you start putting opening balance in QuickBooks, the other entry will go to retain profit balance forward account. And because we've already established what the value of our stock items are, 6,650p, then at that point, it knew that that's the value there, but it also knew that it had to do something with that retained profit, and it's going to go there. If I just open up 6,650p, I'm just going to do all dates to make my life easier. Here are those individual items being put in there. Okay then, let's look at what else we need to import then. So, when we're looking at importing, retained profit brought forward is our most important account. Now, we need to keep remembering that. So if I come back to this bank here and we're looking at documents you need and we're looking at trial balance, when I'm going to post my trial balance into here, and I'm going to use the import feature to make it nice and easy for me, I'm going to post most of them to the right account, so current account, petty cash, plant and machinery, they all fine. But anything that is a control account where I've got individual items, like the stock asset of that 6,650p there, then when I put that item in, I don't want to post it to stock because I'm going to be individually transporting those items in. I want to post it to that retained profit brought forward account. So that's exactly what we're going to do when we do our import. So first thing we need to do is import, or the next thing we need to do, should I say, is import that trial balance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my import section. So remember, company cog, tools, import data. From there, I'm going to go in and I'm going to import my first bit, which is my journal entry. Brand new feature, this one. If you remember, we had a look at it the other day. We have the opportunity to download an example, but let's browse and let's pick up my trial balance and press open. Now, because I use that sample file, it's automatically going to put the data in for me. So it's already defined all them for me, which is great. The only thing I need to do is tell it what sort of date it is. And I always use date, month, year. So we're going to press the import button. And it looks like it's going through perfectly. Now, before I do press that start import, let's just bring that report or that TB up. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like inside in terms of the Excel. Now, the most important thing I've done here is, as I said, any control account I've put to retain profits brought forward account. That one, so if I kind of highlight them, that one, that one, that one, and that one. That means they're not going to go to the exact places and they're going to go there, and the rest of them are just your normal trial balance. So let's go through and press the start import feature, importing my journal entries, and it's nicely done. Press OK. Okay, so if I go back here now and I was to refresh and run with the report, now our trial balance is in. So most of those items are there for us that we care about, but obviously we've now got a figure of retained profit balance forward account down here that we need to deal with. And what they're going to represent is going to be, at the moment, our debtors and our creditors, and then any VAT that we need to worry about. Everything else has been posted for me. And in this particular case as well, I've gone one step further and I've shown putting the profit and loss in there as well. Now, you don't have to necessarily put those items in. That's only if you want to be looking for comparative purposes. So if you're ever going to run a report that's got profit and loss this year compared to last year, then having it in this area will make your life easier. So just consider that going forward. Okay. So we've got our profit and loss in there. So now we need to trial balance in there. Now we're going to look at importing our debtors. So from a debtors point of view, we're going to use the same idea. The only thing we've got to be careful of, though, is invoices and credit notes are separate items. The other thing we need to be considered as well, so if I just close that down and just have a brief look at that debtors figure. The only thing you have to consider here is that item, product, service over here, look. Now, in this particular case, we don't want to be posting our debtors as opening against what they were originally bought. We want to put them against opening balances because we want to, and our product and service opening balances is actually relating to retained profit brought forward. So every time we post them against opening balances, they're going to put another entry into retained profit brought forward account for us, meaning we're going to put those items in correctly. Okay, so let's import them and see what happens. So I'm going to press invoices. I'm going to browse the item. You do notice you have the option to add new product and service and contacts if we need to, but because we've already imported our contact list and our product and services, that will be fine. I'm going to bring in my debtors. Next. Again, you just have to be careful about dates and if it's exclusive or inclusive. They're always going to be exclusive in mine. Need to make sure you map your VAT accordingly. So on this one, I actually have to add in 5%, which is fine. And as you can see, now all I do is press Start Import, and those 4 invoices are coming in. So important to note now that if I jump to my new input trial balance, press Run Report, I now have a debtors figure of 395055. If I click into that, I'm going to see the breakdown of it. Or why don't I just run a report as of today, and let's see who owes me money. So accounts receivable detail, and then those items are brought in. Now remember, we also have on this one, so I go to product and services, I also have a credit note to worry about. So you have to bring in your debtors and your credit notes independently of one another. So I'm going to put credit note in, I'm going to press next. Again, I just have to put the date and make sure I'm happy with exclusive. They want me to tell what VAT codes they are again, and I press next. It has been put into QuickBooks. So again, if I wanted to refresh, you'll notice now my debtors figure is going to change. And if I went in here, I'm not just going to see what's there, it's going to write off that credit note that's been put in there. So the next bit that we need to consider is bringing in our creditors. Now again, just like we did with that debtors, when we put in our creditors, not suppliers, creditors. When we put in our creditors, we don't want to be posting to the individual items that have been bought, we want to put it against retained profit brought forward account. I'm going to go in and look at bills. I'm going to press browse. I'm going to find my credit. Oh, not credit note. This is why you have to be really careful about making sure you just select the right one. I'm going to press next. Again, I need to put my day, my line item in. Press next. Make sure I split my 20%. And as you can see, 3 bills have been imported. Alright, so if I was to now run the report for our P&L, we've now got debtors figure there, which agrees with the working papers, and a creditors figure there that agrees with my working papers. When I look at new import client as well, or look at reports of who we owe money to, should I say in this case, what we owe, detailed, you'll see it's all split down there for me perfectly. So that's 2 items that have been put through QuickBooks and been put directly in using the import feature. Obviously this is just a trial client and the figures could be way bigger than what we've got here. We've only got 50 quid worth of creditors and there's only 2 and a bit grand's worth of debtors, but the same principle applies no matter what. Now our last one we want to look at is because this client is classed as, let's press next. Because this is a cash accounting, we want to make sure our VAT is absolutely spot on. So if I go back to our journal entry here, we've still got some retained profit forward account of 1897393 as a debtor, and then we've got a VAT control of £270.20. Now because we went through doing it this way, our VAT control account is actually spot on. We're cash accounting, so all our debtors and creditors that are outstanding, that's the accumulation of VAT that will be shown when those debtors and creditors are finally paid off. So they're correct to be in our VAT control. We actually have a position in this one where we look at our old VAT 100 report from what our last return was filed. So in this case we were lucky because our December 31st was our last filed return, and on that one we actually had a debtor expected of £1,897.93, which is that final figure there. Now I could just import that journal entry, so to make things nice and easy for me, all I'm going to do is post one more journal entry. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do this manually. Again, I could import this if I needed to, but I'm going to say on the 31st of 12/19, my journal number of opening balance VAT needs to be 18973. Save and close. And now that item has been completed. What that means now, it's going to make my life so much easier, is everything's been put, and I get the magic number of 0 just there. So let's just break that down to everything we've done. The first thing we did was we looked at bringing in the trial balance itself. So the first thing we did was we imported the trial balance using QuickBooks, or brand new import tool for journals, brought that item in. Then we used the import tool to bring in our debtors individually and our creditors individually, which also meant our VAT control account was nicely going to build up as it should do. Our VAT suspense account was the one last item we had to bring in. We credited that as a journal entry just to make it nice and simple, and that means from our VAT account we've got the amount of the VAT control which we're happy with, and then the VAT suspense is what we're due to be paid next month. And that's pretty much it from the importing of a document into opening balance into QuickBooks. And as you can see, it actually can be really quick and easy if you use the import tools there. And just to show some kind of items that have been brought in, let's have a look at one of the invoices we brought in. So invoice 1001. This is the exact item we brought in when we did that import options. Notice how it's going to product and service opening balances. And if I did a transaction journal, we can see exactly when we import that data how that affected everything. It posted £1,798.35 to debtors, and it split all these items into retained profit forward, and the control VAT was put into the individual ones. So it's a nice breakdown, and using that look at the transaction journal sometimes is the best way for you to understand exactly what transactions have done. So let's look at that. A bill as an example as well. So here's one of our trade creditors we brought in. Again, we posted directly to retained profit brought forward. So if I went to transaction journal and brought that up, you'll notice it's gone to creditors there of £20. Retained profit has gone to £20. And because there's no VAT involved in this one, there's no VAT to worry about. But if there was VAT, that'd make it nice and straightforward for me. Okay, there's a couple more bits we just need to cover up. There's a final check. Now the first final check you'd always want to do is go into that report. So reports, is make sure we're happy. So this is where you would get your old trial balance or your previous trial balance and just tick these off, make sure you're happy with them. And one extra step I would always put in here is also use the reconcile feature. So let's just go accountant tool and reconcile. Remembering when you're reconciling, it's mainly aimed at bank accounts, but there is no problem with you finding any of these accounts. And personally, I would want to reconcile even my retained profit forward account, because I know that should be 0. I know that should be 0 on the 31st of the 12/19. So if I press start reconciling, and I tick all those items, here are all the individual transactions been posted against retained profit brought forward account. I'm now at 0. Once I press finish now, that's going to give me confidence now that that account's been dealt with correctly. And also, if I went to my overview picture, I would see now that if I'm looking through errors, I don't have an opening balance equity problem. So there you are. Really quick and easy way of getting information into QuickBooks regarding open balances. As I said at the start of this isn't just about bringing in those opening balances when you first set up a client, but you can use this functionality to bring in information that's going to relate to an opening balance adjustment. So if you've just run a year end and you've just done some statutory accounts, you've got all these adjustments to make, consider using this way to get that data quickly into QuickBooks to align your management account or your QuickBooks account with your statutory accounts. You'll see that most of this importing procedure we've looked at is all really related around and all kind of pivots around you first of all downloading a sample file and then just firing all that data into that sample file. I really do recommend use that sample file first, get your head around what it's asking for. Every single one of those import features gives you the opportunity to see what it is it's looking for and puts in a little bit more depth for you, and then just use that as your basis to get that data into QuickBooks. That whole process there was extended a little bit because I was explaining stuff as I went through, but really getting that data in there can be as quick as 15 minutes worth of work if all your imports are all lined up correctly. And that's it, that's importing data. And it's really the principle that you can just keep bringing and expanding. If you start on your opening balances, because you know how your opening balances should look, then that's going to be your best starting point, and then just start expanding on that and adding things as you go along. Remember in one of those other videos, we looked at importing tools and looking at the import of the journals, and we looked at that in a little bit more detail. This is just an expansion of that particular video. So my name's Aaron, I've been looking at importing information for you, and especially opening balances. I hope you stay safe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.
I say yeah. I told him I can be a fighter if you want. I'll be there to catch you if you fall. I can make it brighter when it's dark, I told him I would do it all for you, and I know you do it for me too. I can be a fighter if you want, I can be a fighter. I can be a fighter if you want. I can be a fighter if you want. All the way that I feel, yeah, I know that it's real, 'cause I can get him out of my head. I don't care what we do, everything's feeling new. Even if we stay in bed, my heart is saying yeah.